Humans armed their ships with cannons. The Galactic Council laughed until Earth fired one. The Chamber of Voices had not gone silent in 400 years. Not during the Krivex uprising. Not during the collapse of the Third Orbital Bank. Not even when the Ashani matriarch declared war on her own bloodline. But it was silent now. Ambassador Voss Talrin of the Sennari Compact stood frozen at the podium. His 4 eyes locked on the tactical display floating above the central dais. The display showed a single human vessel, registry unknown, drifting at the edge of the Ophrenne blockade. 30 seconds ago, that ship had been a smudge of gray metal that every scanner in the room had classified as civilian, unarmed, negligible. 30 seconds ago, the Sennari heavy cruiser, Vail's Mercy, had put 200 kinetic rounds into its hull as a warning. The gray ship was still there, not a scratch on it. And then it had fired back, one shot, the Vail's Mercy, a cruiser that had stood for 11 years as the pride of the Third Fleet, was now 2 expanding clouds of debris tumbling into the dark. "Replay it," rasped Counselor Ibrahim Voss, gripping the edge of his seat with all 6 fingers. "Replay the shot." Asterisk 6 days earlier, Earth had asked for nothing. That was what made the humans strange to the Compact from the very beginning. Every species that had joined galactic society in the last 3 centuries had come with a request. Territory, technology, protection, trade rights. The Khaleesi had begged for medical patents. The Orsun had groveled for a seat on the council after their homeworld sun began to fail. Humanity sent a single envoy, a woman named Dr. Amara Chen, who stood before the Chamber of Voices and said, "We're not here to ask you for anything. We're here to tell you we exist and we'd like to trade. That's all." The council had laughed. Not maliciously, the Sennari didn't laugh with cruelty, only with the particular condescension of a species that had flown between stars for 6,000 years, looking down at one that had only just left its own solar system a generation ago. Counselor Ibrahim Voss, then a junior representative, had been the one to ask the question that would echo through Compact history. "And how, Dr. Chen, does your species intend to defend this trade, should someone decide to simply take what you have?" Amara Chen had smiled, small and tired. The smile of someone who had heard the question 1,000 times in 1,000 boardrooms on her own world. "We have cannons," she said. The chamber had erupted into laughter that took nearly a full minute to die down. Cannons. The word itself was almost sentimental, plucked from some pre-space flight epoch of iron ships and gunpowder. The Compact's arsenals ran on graviton lances, phase disruptors, singularity torpedoes, weapons that unmade matter at the level of its molecular bonds. Cannons belonged in a museum, not a starship. Dr. Chen had not laughed. She had simply nodded, thanked the council for its time, and gone home. No one on the Compact side thought about that conversation again for 3 years. Until the Vail's Mercy stopped transmitting. Captain Idrissa Okafor had not wanted this mission. She had wanted, if she was honest with herself, a quiet rotation running supply escort along the Corward lane. 6 months of boring routine before she rotated home to see her son's first day of secondary school. Instead, she'd been given command of the Meridian's Oath, Earth's newest and only Dreadnought-class vessel, and orders that could be summarized in 4 words. Do not get seen. The Oath was 800 meters of matte black hull, built in the orbital yards above Luna using alloys that had taken Earth's metallurgists a decade to perfect after first contact, after they'd realized quietly and with growing unease exactly how outmatched they were. Because Earth had never believed Amara Chen's joke about cannons was actually a joke. "Command deck, report," Okafor said, watching the Ophrenne system unfold on her main display. A cluster of mining stations and refineries that the Compact had annexed from a smaller species called the Rel 2 generations ago, and had recently begun using as a staging ground uncomfortably close to human-charted space. "Stealth field holding at 98%, Captain," said her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Prianair. "We are, as far as their sensors are concerned, a rock." "Let's stay a rock," Okafor said. "Passive scan only. I want a full picture of that blockade before we decide anything." For 3 days, the Meridian's Oath drifted through the Ophrenne system unseen, gathering data. What they found unsettled even Okafor's steadiest officers. The Compact wasn't just staging ships at Ophrenne. They were building a forward operating base, one clearly designed to project force toward the Sol system's outer boundary. Fleet analysts back on Earth had warned this might happen eventually. No one had expected eventually to mean now. "They're not hiding it," Nair said quietly, studying the blockade's formation. 16 warships, 3 of them cruiser class. They don't think anyone's watching. They don't think anyone could be watching. "Why would they?" Okafor murmured. "As far as the galaxy's concerned, we're still the species with cannons." That was when the Vail's Mercy found them. It wasn't a sensor failure. It wasn't bad luck. It was a Sennari Corvette running an unscheduled patrol sweep on a frequency band Earth's engineers hadn't fully accounted for when tuning the Oath stealth field. For 4 agonizing seconds, the Dreadnought's hull flickered into visibility on Sennari scopes before the field compensated and reasserted itself. 4 seconds was enough. "Captain, the Vail's Mercy is altering course," Nair reported, voice tight. "They've made us. Or made something." Okafor felt the old, familiar tightening in her chest, the one she'd trained a decade to control. "Options. We could hold stealth and outrun them," said her helmsman, Ensign Tomas Reyes. "Slip back toward the border before they confirm contact." "They'll confirm contact within the hour regardless," Nair said. "They'll report an anomaly. Command will scramble more ships. We lose the element of surprise on a mission whose entire point was surprise." Okafor looked at the tactical display. At the 16 ships forming a wall between the Ophrenne system and the long dark road home to Sol. She thought of Amara Chen standing in that alien chamber 3 years ago, absorbing laughter with a small, patient smile, because she'd known, everyone back on Earth had known, that the day would come when a decision like this one would land on someone's shoulders. It had landed on hers. "Drop the stealth field," Okafor said. "Slowly. Let them see us clearly. I want them to choose to fire first." Nair turned, eyes wide. "Captain, they will fire first," Okafor said, quiet and certain. "They always do. Every species in that compact has spent 6,000 years being the biggest gun in every room they've ever walked into. They won't be able to help themselves." She looked at her crew. 12 men and women. All of them younger than she'd like. All of them further from home than any human crew had ever been. "And when they do, we're going to teach them why we stopped worrying about being the biggest gun a long time ago." The Vail's Mercy fired 200 rounds of kinetic ordnance across the Meridian's Oath's bow. Standard compact protocol. A warning volley meant to intimidate an unknown vessel into halting and identifying itself. It was the kind of gesture that had made lesser species surrender for 6,000 years. The rounds struck the Oath's forward shielding and did nothing at all. Not minimal damage. Nothing. The energy dispersed across a shield lattice that Earth's physicists had spent 9 years developing in secret, using principles no compact science had bothered to explore because compact science had never needed to. Not when graviton lances made brute kinetic weapons obsolete generations ago. Humanity, denied access to graviton technology, denied a seat at the table of real weapons, had gone a different direction entirely. If they couldn't out-tech the compact's exotic arsenals, they would outbuild the boring ones. Solid ordnance, simple physics, unstoppable mass, driven by engines that made the word cannon feel almost like a private joke Earth had been keeping for 3 years. "Captain, they're preparing a second volley," Nair said. "Graviton lance charge signature detected. That's no warning shot, that's a kill shot." Okafor exhaled once. "Return fire. 1 round mass." 1 round, Reyes repeated. Hands steady on the controls despite everything. The Meridian's Oath's main battery, a magnetically accelerated slug 40 centimeters across, built from depleted uranium and human stubbornness, propelled to a meaningful fraction of light speed by a rail system that ran the length of the Dreadnought's spine, fired once. The Vail's Mercy did not have time to raise shields the round couldn't have cared less about anyway. Compact shielding was tuned to disperse energy weapons, to bend and absorb the elegant, arcing violence of graviton lances and phase disruptors. It had never been designed to stop a piece of solid metal moving fast enough to punch through 600 meters of warship like it was fog. The cruiser didn't explode so much as cease to be a single object. In the chamber of voices, the silence stretched into its second full minute before Counselor Ibrahim Voss finally spoke. "Replay it," he said again, and this time his voice cracked in a way 400 years of compact composure had never required of him before. The tactical feed replayed. 16 ships, 1 shot, 1 cruiser gone. "That is not possible," said Ambassador Talrin, though the words seemed to leave him out of habit rather than conviction. "Kinetic weapons cannot penetrate modern shielding. It is a fundamental principle of our shielding," interrupted Counselor Voss, and something in the old diplomat's ancient weathered face had shifted. Not into fear, not yet, but into the particular dread of a man recalculating every assumption he had built a career upon. "We built our defenses against the weapons we understood. We never built them against a hammer." He looked around the chamber, at representatives from 11 species who had spent 3 years quietly congratulating themselves on humanity's quaint insistence on projectile weapons. 3 years ago, Voss said slowly, "I asked a human envoy how her people intended to defend themselves. She told me they had cannons. We laughed at her. He turned back to the display, to the drifting wreckage of the Vail's Mercy, to the single black Dreadnought sitting motionless and unhurried at the edge of the Ophrenne blockade. Not retreating, not advancing, simply waiting. As if it had all the time in the galaxy and none of the fear. "I do not believe," Voss said quietly, "that we understood the joke." Aboard the Meridian's Oath, Captain Okafor watched the remaining 15 compact warships hold their position. None of them advancing, none of them retreating, all of them recalculating everything they thought they knew about the smudge of a species they dismissed for 3 years as harmless. "Captain," Nair said carefully. "Orders?" Okafor thought of Amara Chen. Back on Earth now, probably asleep, probably unaware that the quiet trade envoy's small tired joke had just rewritten the balance of power in known space. She thought of her son, starting secondary school in 4 months, growing up in a system that had just proven, to itself as much as to anyone else, that it would not be taken, would not be dismissed, would not be laughed at twice. "Hold position," Okafor said. "Open a channel to the blockade fleet, plain audio, no encryption. I want them to hear this clearly." When the channel opened, she kept her voice level, almost gentle, the voice of someone who had won and felt no need to gloat about it. "This is Captain Idrissa Okafor of the Earth vessel, Meridian's Oath. You entered a system near our border and fired on a ship that gave you no reason to. We're not looking for a war. We never were. But we've spent 3 years building the kind of peace that doesn't require anyone to underestimate us to keep it." She paused, watching the 15 ships hold their silent, motionless line. "Tell your council," she said, "that Earth still has cannons, and Earth is done being quiet about it." She closed the channel, and for the first time in 6 days, allowed herself to breathe. Behind her, on the display, the wreckage of the Vail's Mercy drifted on, a slow tumbling monument to the last day the galaxy ever looked at humanity and saw something small.